Hello everybody, welcome back. Again, if you're still watching, you're wondering why I just said that again, because I'm not sure how I'm going to cut up the editing. But today, we're continuing on, and I want to start off with a simple question. I want to talk about you today. We're going to get to physics, but I want to talk about you. Yes, you, the viewer, right now. Does happiness make you feel complete? What is happiness? Just use a working definition of a content state where you feel enjoyment and you're content with life, and you would self-classify, you would identify as happy. But right, does happiness make you feel complete? How does it make you feel full physically? So just wanted to talk a little bit about emotion and completeness. What makes somebody feel fulfilled, right? Feel complete on a personal level, we would say the word fulfillment. But is it money and materials, or is it family and is it friends? Is it another purse, another fancy dinner? Is it more or different experiences? It could be either. I don't know, maybe you like materialistic stuff. I don't see anything wrong with that. You work hard, you put something, you provide some value to society, whether all other parts of society think it's valuable or not. Like, I don't know, for example, a lot of people drag OnlyFans, or, I don't know, selling some tchotchke kind of object for a product. I don't know, if people buy it and they enjoy it for whatever, and you're not committing fraud or lying, it does good for other people, yeah, absolutely go for it. But I don't think materialistic objects make you bad or immoral or anything like that whatsoever. It's just the byproduct of valuable work. But so you could like materials, you could not. You could like your family, you could not. But just what makes people feel complete is dependent on their maturity level, their level of insecurity. Remember, we said we can say attraction is objective. And then if you look at society as a whole, maybe not you personally, but just the overall trend of humanity, again, we've talked about it. People start out maybe, they're ambitious and they're chasing their career and they're maybe a little more cutthroat, and then they get where they want to in life and then they kind of mellow out and then they settle down. There's literally a term for it, settling down. Settling down is when you're limiting your speciality, your tendency to differentiate, to go, and you kind of more just settle into a routine, a standard way of life, as opposed to trying to expand and grow your horizons, whether that's on a personal level, your career, your family, romantic interests, stuff like that, or like on a moral value level, like politics or religion or your favorite sports team. But what makes people feel complete or full or validated is just whatever they're interested in, seeing other people interested in them as well. It just validates your human existence as, hey, I'm like this, somebody else is like this as well. But the interesting thing is, again, back to kind of our preschool years or our younger years, and we talked about little Johnny or little Timmy being mean to little Sally or little Susie. How do little kids define themselves? How do they define their personality? You go up to your 11-year-old cousin or, your 14-year-old cousin and you say, hey, what's up? Who are you? Like explain, what, tell me about yourself. And they're like, well, I'm not one of those TikTokers. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not this. I'm not that. A lot of insecurity tends to define itself in the negative. So we've discussed in language how there really isn't negation. Well, there is negation, but you assert the existence of something and then you say it isn't there or why it shouldn't be there. And so existence, then negation. But when you're insecure as a child, you tend to define yourself as what you aren't because you don't like those characteristics, or you don't, even more generally or more truthfully, you don't want to be seen. If you see somebody else have a characteristic, let's just say you have a black notebook. I'm Brad, I have a black notebook. Johnny sees that I have a black notebook, and he thinks that I'm stupid for having a black notebook. He thinks that because he thinks that if somebody else saw him with a black notebook, they would think he's stupid. So again, he's projecting literally his insecurity onto somebody else and acting and creating behavior patterns based off his projected insecurity, which is effectively what most behavior is for everybody I've ever met, ever. But defining yourself on what you're not is not actually defining yourself. But it is speciating, right? That is speciality. You are speciating, you are differentiating. That is, differentiation is still, again, that's already axiomatized, so that's not going to change, again, for a tremendously, infinitely, millionth long time. But that was, I guess, another extension of the identity, discussing identity. Kind of wrapping up for actually, no, never mind. A random historical thing popped out, but then again, came up in Special as well, right? When people say Genghis or Genghis Khan, it's like Genghis. It's like more like a he, like an X I, maybe in Spanish, like a he, Genghis, or Hegis. I don't even know if there's an N sound in there. But if I say Ghegis, Hegis or Hegis is what I would say. It's the he. So again, I just have like gente for people in Spanish, but he are also like the kind of like the S and the Cyrillic kind of is pronounced like he. But the G there's, I just had deep intuition and popped up. And if I write it down, again, I'm building off of something. And again, like I said, I can be completely wrong about certain things, and not if it's proven, but on these little, it's just, there's some intuition. There's some insight. There's some reason I wrote it down, so I wrote it down and I just say it. And what comes of it, I don't know. Or else I would say it. But consider who has a voice over the years, right? Leaders, like Genghis or Hengis or whatever the correct pronunciation was. But leaders, conquerors, right? History is written by the victors. People have said that. That's not my original quote, but it's true. And so it's like over the years, the people that lose, or the people that get beaten down, or the people that more people have lived and died than more people have had voices. And I mean being heard, being listened to. Certainly in terms of being listened to on a like educational level or political level or like a governmental leader. But just in general, just in your 5-person friend group or whatever, whose voice gets listened to is typically whoever has the most logic, who's the most reasonable. And so now, why would that not apply to the species as a whole? And the reality is it does. And so this is kind of the thing where it's like when people, again, we talked about a lot of, again, God is a rank. There's nothing special to me. I'm not religious. There's no like lead up or build up about that stuff. It's just a fact in the same way my notebook is black. It's just people, when it comes to tradition and historical implications, people just get weirded out, and it's just, I don't have time for 14-year-olds that can't hear facts. But, like I said, God was a rank, almost certainly female. Again, for the reasons they say Jesus was the son of God, because he was a translator of less capacity. The word of God, we covered that in excruciating detail. It should be very poignant from last episode. But when they say they spread the word of God, right? So let's say, people also say, right, I couldn't have said it better myself. So if you have a single individual describing the entirety of known ontology better than the rest of the species, what would happen would that person's individual vocabulary would become the ontological basis for the entire species. And I wonder if that will ever happen again. Definitely not. But point being is when people say, I speak with God every day. They were born into a world. They came before you. Other people lived. They had experiences in life, and they describe those with words. You learn those words, and so you feel them. In the same way you read a sentence of an actor you said, and you're like, oh, I read that in his voice. When you hear the voice of God, or when you think in the voice of God, you're literally thinking of yourself. You're talking about self-realization of your own identity. Right? You can go look at Kevin Gates' album, I'm Him. Are you that guy? I'm him. Anybody says that. I mean, that was like a cultural phenomenon recently. When they're saying, I am him, you're literally referencing to the rank of God, saying that you are him, you are that guy. And so, that's exactly where that comes from. But it's not, again, it has nothing to do with people coming down from the sky and being something. No. It's just a really smart person. Providing having his personal vocab subsuming or enveloping the entirety of known ontology. Because then they have to spread the word, right? You're going to pick up on the terminology, the logical sequences of the people that know what they're doing, because it is more efficient axiomatically. From physics, from electrons to me and you. And so, that is what's really going on there. But all language you've ever learned is you learned it from somebody else, or you synthesized yourself, and I'm provably the only one synthesizing logical words today, right now, at an axiomatic level. Because anybody synthesized words where it's like, lingo, go doohickey, or it's so hard to think of words like when you think of examples of stuff that happens all the time if you're not thinking about it. But just like anytime you use the likeness bias, E, right? That is janky, that is guitar-y, that is the uncomfortable upside down E. And so you just you You synthesize words, and when you do that, they're never used in fundamental ontology. That's why they're not axiomatic, but you still synthesize words. And so to finish up for today, dimensionality 3 is open. Black bodies radiate. So I wanted to again further build out and make our intuition more robust concerning the fundamental stability of 2. Again, yin and yang, up and down, left and right, forward and backward. But R2 is stabilized. Again, the fundamental physical reason, we have the leftover microwave, cosmological microwave background radiation. That is temperature. That is our leftover energy from the stabilization of R2. That is universal. That is why light is the universal speed, because light is not moving. It is a medium, but is really the momentum field, the pressure gradient of discrete bodies with mass. And then that information, that's why it even generalizes into a gravitational wave. You don't just have light, but you have a gravitational wave. You're really just talking about momentum. But the point being is there's a fundamental stability of 2. We live in 3 dimensions. I'm a black body, I radiate, I have a temperature, I sweat, I eat, my mass changes, so on and so forth. But to solidify this definition, keeping speciality in mind, linguistics and logic, to get to this definition, what can we say about 2? Again, we've generalized all force, which is contained within pressure. All pressure that exerts or changes the state of momentum or affects inertia is a push or a pull. So that is the relatively stable, again, relatively stable, just using the physical terminology from my paper to keep it consistent for academia. Set of all force, meaning you can, again, you have the strong nuclear force, the weak nuclear force, E&M, and gravity. You guys have already made that force, and so it's just a relatively stable set pressure contained within the pressure gradient. But you're going to see those forces over here and over here and over here and over here. Just again, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes form. But what we kind of brushed over then is we said the past is definite. Everything that's happened before is definitive. It's never coming back. You can't change it. It is set in stone. It's petrified. But in the future is indefinite or undefined or infinite. But wait a second. What about the present? Right? I told you these aren't random examples. Present or present. The present isn't defined. Right? What I just said 5 seconds ago is definitive. I can't take that back. It's been said. It's been out into the universe. What am I going to go say in 5 seconds from now? I don't know. But when exactly does that happen? Where is here? When is now? I just thought of something. That thought had to transmit, and I had to tense up and change my mouth structure to vibrate the molecules in the air to vibrate my camera so it records that vibration. Now you're listening to that vibration through your air, maybe your headphones, and you're hearing the words that we have solidified meaning because language is consistent and you understand me. So what point was that information transmitted? And point being is any information transfer takes amount of time. So what is present in fundamentally when you're in that identity state, me, I, the only person that the only person that can, on a personal level, say now is the beginning is again the reference frame, you as an individual. And so we don't need to make that complicated or philosophical, because anytime if you get in any sort of philosophical feelings from this, I am not being correct or discreet or direct enough or descriptive enough, excuse me. Just say, hey Brad, you're a fucking idiot down in the comments. You weren't clear enough here. Which is what normal people do if you're not blacklisted from all of society, because academia and the world governments already know this is completely true. But the present is not well defined. That is a very poignant result. Because people say, all you have is the present. It's like, nah, bro. But again, people say that because it is some sort of intuitive awareness that it isn't defined. Doing things exactly incorrectly. It's like I can't tell you how many times I've been out at a restaurant, and I don't go out. I mean, I'm talking back when I actually went out to restaurants. But again, completely because I'm poor. Again, I'm the victim of crime. I've discussed that as much as I could. But I'll be thinking on the menu like, hey, option 1 is something I get a lot. I'm going to try to get something different. The waitress will come by, are you ready to eat? And I'll be like, oh yeah, option number 1. And so it's just like, I just told myself I'm not going to do that, and I did exactly the thing I said I wasn't going to do. And so that's a pretty common thing to do. Again, I don't know why. But kind of the final thing is I want to finish up with another working definition, or another part of the definition of sensorality. Fingers are sensors, right? We have an appendage, right? Someone said, show me your appendages. Besides my third leg, I have 2 legs and 2 arms. If somebody said appendage, they're thinking arms, not really hands, certainly not fingers, not your kneecap, but your leg is and it's in its hole. But fingers are literally sensors. Your toes are literally sensors with an S. And so I'm just equating that because they are. Right? What do I do with my fingers? You sense things. What do you do with your tongue? You sense things. Your eyes, you sense things. So I sense. I am a sensor with an OR. I am a sensor. Because our basis is a person. Right? And so that's where our OR, again, before I said ER, there's more things with ER that reference people than OR that reference people. Again, that's just more of showing the iteration, and that wasn't a definitive statement, but that shows like the iteration. It does tend to, if you end in ER, is more relevant to a person. But a sensor, I am a sensor. I have sensorality. And so your body as a whole is a sensor. And it is. And that's how we increase our efficiency in the universe, right? We're circling through our axiomatic operative words. But now we want to be comprehensive. And that's why sensorality is with a C is different than sensorality with an S. And that's why free will exists, and that's why you can make choices for yourself. Except for me, because I'm the victim of supercrime. Sensorality is soulful. Sensorality souls. Again, we discussed how alliteration, when you're condensing things into, you're going to create a bunch of alliterations, which have just flooded my derivation, but I just highlight the interesting ones. And so people say this word soul, and then you say, like, well, what is it? Again, now back to the idea of you can have complete property characteristic. You can have a property or a characteristic without knowing the underlying state completely. So again, you can have a soul. Well, what is that? People don't. It's sensorality. It's part of the word family of sensorality, and so, but again, it encompasses that. But it's just the human nature, your ability to have sentience, to sensate, and see that's I'm not at the final definition, but that's what I do when I'm not on this camera. Is I just sit there and just write down all the words that come out. I just brute force the definition. But there isn't. No, I don't. That's a lie. I mean, I am brute force the best logician ever, but the amount of intuitive jumps I have to make just to even know, like to know sensorality or speciality, the right form of the words, and just to intuitively start doing iterations and dimensionless analysis and geometric linguistics, which are not known subjects. I mean, I'd mastered those things intuitively before I went to preschool, and so my intuition is just I don't know. Between me and somebody else, the only difference I can really tell is when people say, "Hey, I have no idea how to solve all of science." I'm like, "Oh, that shit is trivial as fuck." And so that is all for today. Again, a bunch of results. Again, sensorality is word, working that through wordality, and then to fingers are sensors. Sensorality is feeling, and then a sensor as a noun is a switch. Right? If I have a light switch, it's a sensor with a C. If I have a finger, I have a sensor with an S. A sensor is a switch. I can do this. Woohoo! Cool beans. The dynamic limit showing that connection of how that preserves syllability, and it changes the linguistics, the letters that represent the words, but it preserves again, solidarity, it keeps that into one continuous thing by pulling the D over to the A, which is again, if you study the French language whatsoever, and when you pronounce a lot, like in French, you don't pronounce the T at the end of a lot of words. But if you're reading a sentence, you pretty much always carry the T, or you will pronounce the T. And so that is also, again, showing that with an entire language family, the language French. But that's very true with a lot of languages. But again, just showing you how you take two discrete things, combine them, preserve the syllability, and then create another discrete, unique thing. And then pronunciation is preserved. So thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.